Welcome to the video for lesson 4. What we're going to learn about today is how to use CSS to style things. So we're going to learn about something called cascading style sheets. We're finally going to get to use this section of the web page called the head section. So what I need to do firstly, I've got this bunch of code here, L4 demo, and what I'll do is I'll make this available in the booklet, so you should be able to find it. And you can copy and paste all of the pre-made code for the page straight into a new file, which you're going to call lesson4.html. We're also going to make something called lesson4.css. So what on earth does CSS mean, you ask? CSS means cascading style sheets, and what it is a separate document that you make that can then control the styling of elements on a web page, and it's actually its own type of language. So it's not HTML, it doesn't have the triangular tags, but it's a document with a type of code in it that can control either groups of those tags or individual tags. And I'm going to go through now some different ideas. So we're going to look at 3 different ways CSS controls a web page. The first thing we need to do is actually connect the style sheet to the HTML. But I need to actually copy the demo code in firstly. So I'm going to highlight all of that. You'll get yours obviously via the booklet. Go to the lesson4.html document. And then we need to go to the head section. Yeah, finally we can use the head section. And we're going to make a weird looking tag inside the head section called link. What we type in next is rel, as in for relationship, equals style sheet. Then we type href, hyperlink reference, just like we would with a hyperlink, equals, and we need to give the name of the style sheet we're going to use, which is lesson4.css. That's where my styles are going to be kept. And I just close that tag. It's pretty straightforward. And now my page, lesson4.html, is linked to the style sheet. The first way we can use a style sheet to control parts of a web page is control by tag. So we're going to write it in a way that it controls anything with a particular HTML tag. So let's see how that's done. So I'm going to go over to my style sheet. Actually, firstly, silly me, I'm going to preview this. I'm going to preview my page, and we're going to just / lesson4.html. So obviously that's the way it looks at the moment. 2 huge giant images, and we're going to use the style sheet to basically change all of the images on the page to only be a certain width. So actually no, we're going to make them a certain height, aren't we? So if I go to lesson 4 CSS, it's very similar to the way we write styles in previous lessons. Alright, IMG. I then write a funny little curly bracket and I press enter between them. Right, so that's how we do it. And what we'll do now is we'll control all images. So what I'm going to write is width. No, we're not going to write width. I'm going to write height, colon. Okay, and we're going to go for 200 px. And then right after that, you need to put a semicolon. Okay, so that should control both of those images now. And presto, both of them are 200 pixels. And that relates to the idea of the cascading style sheets. Instructions cascade down to all elements that fit that bill. Okay, let's make a new rule then, and this time we're going to control paragraphs. So all I need to do is write P, and now I'm going to give the paragraphs some fancy style. So let's go firstly for font family, and we can choose one of our lovely web-friendly fonts. It pops up for you straight away. I'm going to go for Let me think, am I going to go for Lucidia Sands or Jill Sands? Let's have a look. And put a semicolon at the end there. Let's have a little look to see how that looks. Lovely, nice, sort of rounded text now, isn't it? Let's put a new rule in, and well, another attribute to the P rule. So let's put in font. No, we don't need to write font, we just write color. And this time, it gives us a load of options. So obviously I can go to Google and I can find the hex colors and put a hex code in, or I can choose one of these here, go for hot pink and semicolon. And let's see what it does now. Ugh. Maybe not, I don't know. Let's have a think about that. I tell you what, I'll put another element code in, and I'm going to put body in. Put the squiggly brackets in, and this time I'm going to write background, color, and we're going to go for black, aren't we? And then semicolon. And let's have a look. There you go. Right, just like I did before then, I'm going to put some interesting sort of attributes into this. I'm going to make it all centrally aligned and stop it being just filling the entire page. So let's do that. So after background color black for the body, we're going to put in max width. Okay, we did this before in a previous lesson, but this time we're doing it via a style sheet. Max width 600 px semicolon, and it's really important then also that we put margin and we put auto. Let's have a little look now. And that's a lot nicer, isn't it? So there you go. You can play around with CSS for the different types of tags. So we can set things up to look a certain way. And if I don't like the way that my paragraphs look, all of a sudden, all I need to do is change that from hot pink to something else. Let's have a think. Let's go for aqua. And straight away, all of my text changes to aqua, like that. Very, very clever way of doing things. Okay, so that's one way of controlling a web page with a style sheet. The next method we're going to use is controlling by class. So we're going to create something called a class. And this is quite an interesting idea. You can essentially put a class to any different group of elements and they'll all contain the same styling. So you could have 3 or 4 paragraphs on a page, but you only set 2 of them as belonging to the class, and only those 2 are affected by any change you make to that class. So let's see how you make a class then in a style sheet. So I'm on my style sheet, and to make a class, it's really simple. We put a full stop, and then we come up with a name for the class. So I'm going to call mine Bob, because I like using the word Bob all the time, don't I? And this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go for a color change. You can put as many of these qualities as you want into them. But I'm just going to go for color, obviously semicolon. Let's change the color there to something else. Blue violet. Okay. So currently, nothing's really changing, is it? But I've got to go to the web page now. So go back to my lesson 4 HTML page. And what I can do instead is my second paragraph is going to be given the class Bob. So I go to the P, I write the word class, and I'm going to put Bob in there. So that's now controlled by the class Bob. So when I refresh it, it's now being controlled. So what we see in CSS, let's go back to the style sheet again, a class like this will override the styling that we give to a tag. So the class will always sit above the tag. That's really important to note. So even if you said that all things with the P tag are styled this way, if you go and make a class and add that class to one of your paragraphs, it will automatically be controlled by that class. Okay, let's make another class. Let's call it Kevin. Going down the road of the minions, as you can see. And I'm going to change this one to a nice pink colour. Why? Because I want to, and I think it's fun. There we go. Should we move down this list? There we go. Deep pink. Because pink's not deep enough. So obviously Kevin's not been added to any of the elements. So if I go to the paragraph above and I add this to the class Kevin, now it should go pink. Right, but we've noticed now we've got in our style sheet two different classes controlling different paragraphs, and more paragraphs could be added to that. So let's just change, let me go back to this. Let me just go back to my page. Instead of Kevin, let's make this one Bob as well. And if I make both Bob, they're both going to be that sort of purpley blue colour. There we go. So both of them are being controlled by the same class. I hope that makes sense. So a class can allow you to control things that have been added to it. And that's the second way style sheets can interact with a web page. There's a third method as well. We can control things by ID. So we can give elements an ID. So that's quite an interesting idea as well. So we can give any element on a web page an ID by putting the word ID within its class. And we create an attribute called ID then. So although this has got the class Bob for both of them, I'm now going to put an ID into this. So ID will override the class as well. ID equals grew. Now the ID there is only for that one element. Every element has a separate ID altogether. So let's go and add some CSS for the ID for grew. So what I need to do is I need to put a hashtag in for the ID, grew. And I'm going to go for a color change. And this one is going to be, instead of deep pink, see what I can come up with. This time, should we go for something? I can't think of anything. Don't want aquamarine. It's very predictable. There we go. See what really bright colours there are. So we've got a greeny yellow colour. Oh, hang on. Greeny yellow. Love the way they name these things. So if I refresh that now, obviously the one with the ID grew, because that we use a hashtag to identify an ID, and we've given that element an ID as well as a class. That ID is obviously overriding the class, and the class in turn is overriding the default style we'd give to anything that is part of the P tag. So P overrides the basic HTML styling. See, but then we can give something a class. So the class can override the basic styling of the tag level. And then we can override that with an actual ID styling. So we've got these levels really to CSS and the way it works. So what I want you to do today is you're going to have a play around with all this, and there's a reference guide available to you for lots of different CSS properties you can try out on that page, and just see really what you can do, what you can get it doing in terms of styling and the way you can make things look. So have fun with that, and I look forward to seeing the work you produce.